In a quiet suburban neighborhood on Maple Street, an old German shepherd sits faithfully chained outside a boarded-up house, his unwavering gaze fixed on the padlocked front door. For 5 years, through scorching summers and bitter winters, he's refused to leave, despite countless attempts by animal control to rescue him. Local residents leave food and water, whispering about the mysterious disappearance of the elderly owner and the dog's inexplicable devotion. But what compels this loyal guardian to maintain his endless vigil? When seasoned journalist Sarah Martinez notices something unusual about the pattern of his behavior, always watching that door, always alert at exactly 3 a.m., she begins to suspect there's more to this story than simple canine loyalty. What secret could be so important that it keeps this faithful sentinel at his post? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah Martinez pulled her weathered Toyota Camry to the curb, her notebook already in hand. 23 years of investigative journalism had taught her to trust her instincts, and something about this story felt different. The German shepherd's eyes tracked her movements as she approached, but there was no aggression in his posture, only a weathered vigilance that spoke of years spent waiting. "Hey there, boy," she said softly, maintaining a respectful distance. The dog's collar, worn leather cracking at the edges, caught the morning light. Through the grime, she could just make out the name. Max. Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor who'd first contacted Sarah, emerged from her garden next door. Her aged hands clutched a plastic container of kibble, a ritual she'd maintained for half a decade. "He was such a beautiful dog when Eleanor first brought him home," she said, her voice carrying the weight of memories. "Pitch-black coat, proud stance. Time's taken its toll, but he won't leave. Not for anyone." Sarah jotted notes as Mrs. Peterson continued. "Eleanor Thompson, that's who owned this place. She disappeared 5 years ago, just vanished. Her son Michael came by a few times, looking worried, sick, then he stopped coming too. Nobody's lived here since, except Max." The house loomed. Behind them, its windows boarded up against curious eyes. The once pristine white paint had yellowed with age, and ivy crept up the eastern wall like grasping fingers. But it was the chain that drew Sarah's attention. Not cruel or restrictive, but long enough to give Max access to both the front and back yards. Someone had wanted him to be comfortable while maintaining his post. "The police checked, of course," Mrs. Peterson added, shaking kibble into Max's bowl. The dog acknowledged the food with a gentle wag, but didn't move from his position. "They said Eleanor probably just moved away, forgot to tell anyone. But she wouldn't have left Max. That woman loved this dog more than anything." Sarah approached, carefully, letting Max sniff her hand. His fur was matted in places, despite the obvious care of neighbors like Mrs. Peterson. "Has anyone tried removing him? Animal control's been here 12 times. He's not aggressive, but..." Mrs. Peterson gestured at the chain. "Can't get near that attachment point by the house. He plants himself there, won't let anyone close. They said as long as he's being fed and has shelter, there's a doghouse round back. They can't force the issue." Sarah circled the property slowly, her journalist's eye taking in details. The doghouse was solid, custom-built, with a small, solar-powered fan for summer months. Someone had planned for Max's long-term care. The chain's attachment point was bolted into the house's foundation, professional work meant to last. "What about Michael?" Sarah asked, returning to Mrs. Peterson. "Eleanor's son? Such a nice boy." Mrs. Peterson's face clouded. "He was here almost every day at first, trying to get Max to come with him. Then, well, there was some trouble. I don't like to gossip, but if you're looking into this, you should know. He's in prison now. Something about financial crimes, they said. But Michael was no criminal. Eleanor raised him right." Sarah's pen paused over her notebook. "When was the last time anyone saw Eleanor?" "April 15th, 5 years back. I remember because it was tax day. She was carrying a big manila envelope, seemed in a hurry. Max was barking up a storm, not his usual behavior at all. Next morning, the boards were up on the windows, and that chain was installed. Mrs. Peterson shook her head. The police said there were no signs of foul play, but they never found her car, or her. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting strange shadows through the overgrown trees. Max remained at his post, his eyes fixed on the front door as if expecting it to open at any moment. Sarah noticed something else now, a pattern worn into the grass around the house, a sentinel's path walked countless times. Mrs. Peterson, you mentioned Max is always alert at 3 a.m. How do you know that? Oh, I'm up at that hour. Old age, you. No, can't sleep like I used to. Every night he stands at attention, staring at that door. Sometimes he whines, but mostly he just watches, like he knows something we don't. Sarah took a final photo of Max with her phone, her mind already assembling the pieces of a story that felt larger than a simple missing person case. As she turned to leave, she heard Mrs. Peterson call after her. Miss Martinez? Find out what happened to them. Eleanor and Michael. They were good people. And Max, he deserves to know his vigil wasn't for nothing. Sarah looked back at the faithful guardian, his greying muzzle and devoted eyes telling a story she was only beginning to understand. Something about this case nagged at her investigative instincts. Dogs were loyal, yes, but this felt different. Max wasn't just waiting, he was guarding something, and Sarah Martinez was going to find out what. The county records office smelled of mildew and forgotten paperwork. Sarah sifted through property documents dating back 3 decades, dust coating her fingertips. Eleanor Thompson had purchased 1247 Maple Street in 1985, the same year her husband died. The file was surprisingly thick for a single-family home. Found something interesting. Tom Bailey, the records clerk who'd known Sarah since her first days as a rookie reporter, peered over her shoulder. Maybe. Sarah pointed to a series of modifications filed in 2018. Look at this. Extensive renovations just months before Eleanor disappeared. New electrical system, reinforced attic floor, custom ventilation. Who remodels their house that thoroughly and then vanishes? Careful, Sarah. Tom's voice dropped. I remember when Eleanor's boy got arrested. Some federal agents came through here, took copies of everything, never said why. Sarah's pulse quickened. Federal agents. The case file said it was handled by local police. Missing persons, sure. But Michael's case, that went way up the ladder. Tom glanced around the empty office. They were especially interested in these. He pulled out another folder, this one labeled Property Liens and Transfers, Thompson Estate. The documents inside told a complex story. Eleanor had paid off her mortgage decades ago, but in 2018 she'd taken out a new loan against the house, $300,000. The money had been withdrawn in cash the same day. 2 months later, Michael Thompson was arrested for alleged involvement in a complex financial fraud scheme. Sarah jotted down dates and details, her mind racing. Tom, I need everything you've got on Michael's case. That's sealed, but... He hesitated, then scribbled a name and number. Linda Chen, clerk at the federal courthouse. Tell her I sent you. She might know something about the evidence they used against Michael. Back in her car, Sarah called the number. Linda Chen's voice was cautious but helpful. The Thompson case? Yes, I remember. Very unusual. The prosecution had bank records showing suspicious transfers, but the defense kept insisting there was exculpatory evidence in that house. Judge denied their motion to search it, said they couldn't prove relevance. What about Eleanor's disappearance? That came up too. Michael claimed his mother had proof of his innocence, that she'd hidden it somewhere before she vanished. Prosecutors said he was trying to deflect attention from his crimes. Sarah thought about Max, standing guard over whatever secrets that house contained. Did anyone ever search the property thoroughly? Police did a welfare check when she was reported missing. Found nothing suspicious. The boards and chain were already up by then, installed the day before, according to the work order. They assumed Eleanor had planned to be away and wanted to secure the place. Sarah drummed her fingers on the steering wheel. One last question. What exactly was Michael convicted of? Helping orchestrate a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme at First Regional Bank, where he worked as an investment advisor. Prosecution said he helped hide money for some powerful clients, took a cut for himself. He got 15 years. The pieces weren't fitting together. Why would Eleanor fortify her house, take out a massive loan, then disappear just before her son's arrest? And why would she leave Max behind, chained up but carefully provided for? Sarah drove back to Maple Street, parking across from the Thompson house. Max looked up at her arrival, his tail offering a slight wag of recognition. She noticed something she'd missed earlier. His eyes weren't just focused on the door, but specifically on the mail slot. Mrs. Peterson emerged with Max's afternoon meal. Find anything useful? Maybe. Mrs. Peterson, in the days before Eleanor disappeared, did you notice any unusual visitors? Anyone bringing large boxes or equipment? The older woman thought for a moment. Come to think of it, yes. A van from some securities company. Men in uniforms installed, something inside. Eleanor said it was a new alarm system. Did you see what company? Atlas Security Solutions. I remember because I thought about getting one myself, but when I called, they said they had no record of ever working in this neighborhood. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. She looked at Max, still maintaining his vigil after all these years. What had Eleanor hidden in that house? What was worth abandoning her beloved dog to protect? The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the unkempt lawn. Sarah noticed another detail. While the grass was overgrown everywhere else, there was a clear path worn between Max's water bowl and his usual watching spot. 5 years of the same routine day after day. Mrs. Peterson, has Max ever tried to get into the house, scratch at the door or windows? No, dear. That's the strangest part. He just watches, especially that mail slot. Sometimes, very late at night, I've seen him pressing his nose against it like he's listening for something inside. Sarah approached the door carefully, noting Max's reaction. He watched her but made no move to interfere. The mail slot was old brass, tarnished but solid. She knelt down, trying to peer inside, but saw only darkness. Then she heard it, so faint she almost missed it. A soft, rhythmic sound from within the house, like machinery running on backup power, still functioning after all these years. Sarah stood slowly, her mind racing. Eleanor Thompson had spent a small fortune renovating her house, installed high-end security equipment through a possibly fake company, then vanished, but not before ensuring her dog would remain to guard whatever she'd left behind. And somewhere inside, something was still running, still waiting to be discovered. She pulled out her phone and dialed her editor's number. "Jack, I'm going to need some resources on this one. And maybe a locksmith." As she walked back to her car, Sarah felt Max's eyes following her. For the first time in 5 years, someone was finally asking the right questions about 1247 Maple Street. The loyal sentinel had kept his post, and now, at last, his patience might be rewarded. The Maple Street Community Facebook group was a goldmine of local speculation. Sarah scrolled through 5 years of posts about the Thompson house, each theory more elaborate than the last. Some claimed they'd seen lights moving inside at night. Others swore they'd heard voices, but one name kept appearing in the older posts: Katie Morrison, age 12, who used to leave drawings for Max. Sarah found Katie's mother Angela through the neighborhood directory. They met at the local coffee shop, where Angela showed Sarah her daughter's old sketchbook. Katie was convinced Max was protecting something, Angela said, flipping through pages of childish drawings. She used to sit on the sidewalk for hours, watching him, said he had a schedule, like a Secret Service agent. The drawings showed Max in various poses, sitting at attention, pacing his well-worn path, pressing his nose to the mail slot. But one sketch made Sarah lean forward. It showed Max looking up at a window, not the boarded-up ones, but a tiny attic vent that was still uncovered. Katie noticed things adults missed, Angela continued. She said Max would stare at that vent, sometimes, especially when the wind blew from the east, like he was waiting for a signal. Sarah studied the drawing's date, March 15th, 2019, 1 month before Eleanor's disappearance. Did Katie ever mention seeing Eleanor during that time? Oh, yes. She said Eleanor seemed scared, but not of Max. Said she was always checking her phone, looking over her shoulder. The day before she vanished, Eleanor gave Katie a handful of dog treats and said, "Make sure Max knows he's a good boy." Katie tried to give him those treats for weeks, but he wouldn't take them, just kept staring at that door. The coffee shop's window offered a clear view of 1247 Maple Street. Even now, Max maintained his post, his graying muzzle testimony to years of faithful service. "There's something else," Angela said, lowering her voice. "My husband, James, he's a detective with the city police. He never worked the Thompson case officially, but he always said it felt wrong. The way the feds swooped in, how quickly they pushed for a conviction on Michael. James tried to look into Eleanor's disappearance separately, but his supervisor shut it down. Said it was out of their jurisdiction." Sarah's reporter instincts tingled. "Would your husband be willing to talk to me?" Angela hesitated. "He's retired." "Now, let me ask him. But Sarah, be careful. Katie used to tell me that Eleanor wasn't just afraid of something, she was preparing for it." Back on Maple Street, Sarah watched the afternoon light play across the house's weathered facade. The neighborhood had changed around it, new families moving in, old ones moving out, but 1247 remained frozen in time, with Max, its constant guardian. Mr. Chen from 2 doors down was walking his poodle, giving the Thompson house a wide berth. Sarah waved him over. "You're the reporter asking questions," he said. It wasn't a question. "My wife and I moved here 4 years ago. Everyone told us about Max and Eleanor. Some say the house is haunted, but I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in secrets." "What kind of secrets?" "Watch Max at sunset," Mr. Chen said. "Every day he walks the same pattern. 7 steps forward, pause, 12 steps back, pause, like he's pacing a boundary. My grandfather was a security guard in Hong Kong. He said faithful dogs don't just guard places, they guard truths." Sarah had noticed the pattern, but hadn't counted the steps. "Have you ever seen anything unusual besides Max's behavior?" 3 months ago, during that big storm. Lightning hit nearby, knocked out power to the whole block. Every house went dark, except that one. For just a moment there was a light in the attic, very faint like a computer screen. Then it was gone. A backup power system, Sarah thought. Still running after all these years, but powering what? Her phone buzzed, a text from Angela. "James will meet you. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., Riley's Bar." As the sun set, Sarah watched Max perform his ritual. 7 steps forward, pause, 12 steps back, pause. The precision was uncanny. She thought about Katie's drawings, Mr. Chen's observation, the hidden light in the attic. Eleanor Thompson hadn't just disappeared. She'd orchestrated something. The renovations, the security system, Max's carefully planned care, the mysterious machinery still humming behind those boarded windows. "What are you guarding, Max?" she whispered. The old dog turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the dying light. For a moment, Sarah could have sworn she saw something there, not just loyalty or patience, but understanding. Max knew exactly what he was guarding, and maybe, just maybe, he had been waiting for someone to finally ask the right questions. As darkness settled over Maple Street, Sarah made a decision. Before meeting Detective Morrison tomorrow, she needed to look more closely at that attic vent. Whatever signal Max had been watching for, whatever light Mr. Chen had seen, it held a piece of this puzzle. She pulled out her phone and opened the community message board, scrolling through years of posts about mysterious lights, strange sounds, and a dog who refused to abandon his post. Somewhere in this digital archive of neighborhood observations lay another piece of the truth. Eleanor Thompson had died, or disappeared, protecting. Max settled into his nighttime position, eyes fixed on the mail slot, waiting for a signal that only he understood. The mystery of 1247 Maple Street had kept its secrets for 5 years, but like the machinery hidden within its walls, the truth was still running, still waiting to be discovered. Riley's bar was nearly empty when Sarah arrived, the neon beer signs casting colored shadows across worn wooden tables. James Morrison sat in a corner booth, his retired detective's instincts evident in his choice of seat, clear view of both exits, back to the wall. "Angela said you've been asking questions," he said as Sarah slid into the booth. "Questions about Eleanor Thompson and her son Michael. I understand you had concerns about his case." Morrison's weathered face tightened. "Ever heard of Russell Bennett? The banking CEO who died in that yacht accident last year. Before that, he was First Regional Bank's president. The man who testified against Michael Thompson." Morrison took a slow sip of his drink. "Thing is, Michael wasn't just some middle manager caught cooking books. He was head of internal compliance. 2 weeks before his arrest, he'd flagged some suspicious transactions. High-level accounts, millions moving through shell companies." Sarah leaned forward. "What happened to those reports?" "Vanished, along with Eleanor. But here's what nobody else knows." Morrison reached into his jacket and pulled out an old smartphone in an evidence bag. "This was found in the bushes near Eleanor's house 3 days after she disappeared. Department logged it as unrelated evidence since it was outside the property line. I checked it myself before they shut me down. It's Eleanor's." Sarah stared at the phone. "Does it still work?" "Battery's dead, and it's locked. But look at this." He turned the bag, showing deep scratches on the phone's case. "Those aren't random. They're numbers carved with something sharp. Eleanor was trying to leave a message." Sarah pulled out her notebook, sketching the pattern. 7 digits. 7 forward, 12 back, Morrison said quietly. "Just like Max's pacing pattern." Sarah's pulse quickened. "You've been watching him too. For 5 years. Everyone thought I was just a retiree walking his dog. But that pattern, it's not random. It's a code. Eleanor was methodical, detail-oriented. Everything she did had a purpose." The bartender approached, and they fell silent until he passed. "What happened when you tried to investigate?" Sarah finally asked. "Got called into the chief's office. FBI had requested all files related to the Thompson property, said it was part of an ongoing financial crimes investigation. Above my pay grade." Morrison's face darkened. 2 days later, I found my case notes deleted from the system. That's when I copied this phone's evidence log and took it home. Been holding on to it ever since, waiting for someone to ask the right questions." Sarah studied the phone through the evidence bag. Those numbers, they could be coordinates, or a password, or an account number. Michael's conviction centered on hidden accounts, money that was never found. $300,000 withdrawn in cash. "The same amount as Eleanor's home equity loan," Sarah said. Morrison nodded. "Eleanor was a former bank teller. She knew how to move money, how to hide it, and she knew something else, something worth protecting. Worth leaving her dog to guard it," Sarah added. "Max isn't just guarding the house." Morrison pulled out his phone, showing Sarah a photo. "Watch this." The video showed Max at his usual post, but slowed down. As a car passed, its headlights swept across the house. For just a moment, Max's head turned, not toward the door, but up toward the attic vent. "He's not watching for intruders," Morrison said. "He's watching for signals. Eleanor trained him to recognize something specific, but what really interests me is this." He forwarded to another clip, time-stamped 3 a.m. In the grainy footage, a faint blue light pulsed behind the vent, almost imperceptible. Max stood at attention, nose pointed upward. Some kind of electronic signal? On a timer, every night, same time, drawing power from somewhere. Sarah thought about the machinery she'd heard running inside. The renovations, the security system. She was setting up some kind of dead man's switch. Smart woman, Eleanor. She knew they were coming for Michael, knew she'd have to disappear, but she left everything in place, the evidence, the money, whatever's hidden in that house, protected by security systems, backup power, and a guardian who never leaves his post. And now the statute of limitations on financial crimes is almost up, Sarah added. 5 years next month. Morrison's eyes narrowed. You think that's what she was planning for? Waiting out the clock? Maybe. But why disappear? Why not just present the evidence at Michael's trial? Because the evidence implicated someone bigger. Someone who could make people disappear. Morrison glanced around the bar again. Russell Bennett's yacht accident. Coast Guard found trace explosives in the wreckage. Case was quietly closed, but I have friends in maritime investigations. They said the blast pattern matched professional demolition work. Sarah felt a chill. You think Bennett was silenced? I think Eleanor Thompson knew exactly what she was dealing with, knew she couldn't fight them directly. So she did something smarter. She set up a failsafe. Time-locked, tamper-proof, guarded by the one sentinel nobody would think twice about. A dog chained outside an empty house, Sarah whispered. A dog who's been counting the days, following his training, waiting for the right moment. Morrison handed Sarah the evidence bag containing Eleanor's phone. I'm retiring for real next month, moving to Florida. This is your story now. But Sarah, whatever Eleanor left in that house, people died keeping it secret. Be careful who you trust. As Sarah drove home, her mind raced with possibilities. The phone's scratched numbers, Max's precise pacing, the pulsing light in the attic. Eleanor had left them a puzzle. One that could only be solved by someone patient enough to observe, smart enough to connect the pieces, and brave enough to face the truth. Tomorrow, she would begin documenting everything. The renovations, the security system, the power source, Max's behavior patterns. Somewhere in this web of clues lay the key to understanding what really happened at First Regional Bank and why. Eleanor Thompson had turned her home into a fortress of secrets. The public library's technology center was empty at this early hour. Sarah connected Eleanor's phone to a power bank, holding her breath. After 5 years, the battery might be too degraded to... The screen flickered to life, her hands trembling. Slightly, Sarah studied the scratched numbers on the case, 712 914 538. The same number of digits as Max's pacing pattern, 7 steps forward, 12 steps back. But when she tried the sequence as a passcode, the phone remained locked. Need help with that? Sarah startled. A young woman with bright purple hair and a library name tag reading Zoe stood behind her. I specialize in digital forensics, Zoe explained, part of the library's new tech literacy program. And you're Sarah Martinez. I've been following your articles about the Thompson house. Sarah hesitated, then decided to trust her instincts. What do you make of these numbers? Zoe examined the scratches. They're deliberate, but this isn't a standard numerical sequence. Look at the spacing. It's more like coordinates, or maybe a chess notation? 7 forward, 12 across, like plotting points on a grid. Zoe grabbed a piece of paper, sketching quickly. If you overlay this pattern on a standard keyboard. Sarah watched as Zoe mapped the numbers to letters. Phoenix. A password. Sarah tried it on the phone. Nothing. Wait. Zoe pointed to Max's worn path in a photo on Sarah's laptop. 7 steps forward, 12 back. He's not counting, he's spelling. P-H-O-E-N-I-X. Eleanor trained him to trace letters. Sarah felt a surge of admiration for Eleanor's ingenuity. But why that word? Phoenix was a mythical bird that rose from its own ashes, Zoe said. But it's also... She typed rapidly on her laptop. Project Phoenix was a proposed banking oversight system at First Regional Bank in 2018. It was scrapped right before Michael Thompson's arrest. Sarah leaned forward. How do you know that? Because I interned in their IT department that summer. The project was Michael's baby. Automated detection of money laundering patterns, the kind of system that could catch things human auditors might miss. or be paid to miss. A piece clicked into place. That's what Michael found. Not just suspicious transactions, a systematic pattern of fraud. And now we have Eleanor's phone. Zoe studied the device. The password isn't Phoenix, that's too obvious. But look at these scratches from another angle. They're not just numbers, they're a route, like instructions for navigating something. Sarah thought about the house's renovations, the security system, the pulsing light in the attic. Eleanor created a maze. The phone, Max's pacing, the timing of that signal, they're all part of a bigger pattern. A pattern designed to be understood only by someone who took the time to watch, Zoe agreed. Someone who'd noticed that Max isn't just spelling Phoenix, he's spelling it backward and forward, like a palindrome. Sarah quickly wrote it out, Phoenix in HP. She tried it on the phone. The screen unlocked. 5 years of battery decay, Zoe whispered. The phone must have been in some kind of hibernation mode, waiting. Like Max, the phone's contents were encrypted, but one file was accessible. A video, dated April 14th, 2019. The day before Eleanor disappeared. Eleanor Thompson's face filled the screen, her eyes tired but determined. If you're watching this, you've solved the first part. Max knows the rest. The evidence is in the house, but it has to be accessed in the right sequence, or it'll self-destruct. Bennett thinks he destroyed everything, but I kept backups. Project. Phoenix wasn't just an oversight system. It was a record of every transaction, every shell company, every bribe. The kind of evidence that can't be erased with a few deleted files. The video crackled with interference. Michael discovered the truth, so they framed him. But they didn't know about my contingency plan. The house is a fortress now, running on its own power. Waiting. Max knows the sequence. I trained him for months. Watch his patterns at night. The timing is crucial. 3 a.m. isn't just a signal check. It's a window. The house. It's more than a building now. It's a vault. And Max is the key. The video ended. Sarah and Zoe sat in stunned silence. The security system, Sarah said finally. Atlas Solutions didn't exist because it wasn't really a security company. Eleanor turned her entire house into a secure database, running on an independent power supply, probably solar with battery backup, Zoe added. That's why it survived the storm. But accessing it, you'd need to understand all the patterns, the timing, the sequences, like a combination lock, but spread across time and space. Sarah gathered her materials. I need to watch Max tonight. His evening patrol, the 3 a.m. signal, they're not just habits, they're instructions. Be careful, Zoe warned. Digital vaults like this, they often have defensive measures. If Eleanor really did hide evidence that powerful people wanted buried, then the house isn't just protected against intruders, Sarah finished. It's protected against itself. One wrong move, and everything inside could be wiped clean. As Sarah drove back to Maple Street, her mind spun with possibilities. Eleanor Thompson, a former bank teller, had outmaneuvered some of the most powerful people in the financial world. She'd turned her home into a digital fortress, its secrets guarded by the most loyal sentinel imaginable, a dog whose very movements were a code, whose routines were the key to unlocking the truth. Max was there as always, his grey muzzle pointed toward the mail slot. But now Sarah saw his vigil differently. He wasn't just waiting, he was maintaining the pattern, keeping the code alive, protecting Eleanor's final message until someone could understand it. Tonight, she would watch. And tomorrow, armed with Zoe's technical expertise, they would begin to decipher the full complexity of Eleanor Thompson's final act of defiance. Sarah found the photo album in the recycling bin behind the convenience store 2 blocks from the Thompson house. It was wrapped in waterproof plastic, deliberately placed rather than discarded. Someone had wanted it to be found, but not too easily. The album's leather cover was worn, its pages yellowed with age. Inside, decades of Thompson family history unfolded in fading Kodachrome. Eleanor as a young bank teller in 1975, her husband Thomas beside her at the First Regional Bank. Employee picnic, Michael's birth in 1980, his first steps, school photos, Thomas's funeral in 1985, Eleanor standing straight-backed beside the grave, 5-year-old Michael clutching her hand. But it was the more recent photos that caught Sarah's attention. Michael's graduation from business school in 2002, his proud smile as he held up his first regional bank ID badge. Eleanor at his side, her expression more complex, pride mixed with something else. Concern? Find something interesting? Sarah jumped. Mrs. Peterson stood in her garden, pruning shears in hand. That's Eleanor's album, the older woman said softly. She gave it to me the day before she disappeared, said to put it where the right person would find it, when the time was right. Why now? Because you're asking the right questions. About Thomas. Sarah flipped back to the funeral photo. Michael's father? And First Regional's head of security. The official report said heart attack, but Eleanor never believed it. Mrs. Peterson set down her shears. Come inside. There's something you need to see. The Peterson living room offered a clear view of Max's post. Mrs. Peterson disappeared upstairs, returning with a shoebox full of letters. Eleanor and I were friends for 30 years. She trusted me with these, but made me promise not to read them until someone like you came asking. The letters, dated between 1985 and 1986, were from Eleanor to Thomas, never sent. Sarah read them carefully, her heart pounding. My darling, one began, I found what you were looking for. The accounts you flagged, the patterns you noticed. It goes higher than we thought. Bennett was just a junior executive then, but he was already building his shadow network. I understand now why you were so afraid. Why you installed that safe room in the attic. Sarah looked up sharply. Safe room? Thomas was paranoid about security, Mrs. Peterson explained. Converted the attic into a panic room in 1984. Eleanor later turned it into something else. A vault, she said, for insurance. The letters continued, painting a devastating picture. Thomas Thompson had discovered systematic fraud at First Regional, stretching back decades. But before he could gather enough evidence, he died suddenly at his desk. Heart attack, the coroner said. No autopsy necessary. Eleanor spent years piecing it together, Mrs. Peterson said. She knew they were watching her, so she played the grieving widow, the quiet bank teller. But she was building something. A case, she called it, insurance for Michael. Because she knew they'd come for him too, Sarah realized. When he started Project Phoenix, history repeating itself. But Eleanor was ready this time. She'd learned from Thomas's mistake. Don't keep the evidence in one place, don't trust the system, and always have a backup plan. Sarah studied a photo from 2018. Eleanor, Michael, and Max at a bank fundraiser. Russell Bennett stood in the background raising a glass. Everyone was smiling, but there was tension in Eleanor's posture. She was standing between Bennett and her son, her hand resting protectively on Michael's arm. The renovations, Sarah said. She wasn't just upgrading the house. She was turning Thomas's safe room into a digital vault. Eleanor was smarter than they knew. Thomas taught her about security systems, and she learned everything she could about computers. Said technology was changing too fast to trust paper records. Mrs. Peterson smiled sadly. She knew they were watching Michael, knew he'd found the same pattern Thomas had. So she built something they couldn't steal or destroy. And Max, he was Thomas's last gift to her, just a puppy when Thomas died. Eleanor trained him herself, said he was the only one she could trust completely. Dogs can't be bribed or threatened. Their loyalty, once earned, is absolute. Sarah laid out the photos chronologically. Thomas and Eleanor in their youth, Michael growing up, the bank's transformation under Bennett's leadership, and finally, the last photo ever taken of Eleanor, standing on her porch with Max, one hand on his head, staring directly at the camera as if sending a message to the future. She wasn't just protecting evidence, Sarah realized. She was protecting a legacy. Thomas started this fight, Michael continued it, and Eleanor found a way to finish it. But it cost her everything, Mrs. Peterson said softly. Her son, her freedom, her home. All she has left is Max, keeping his vigil, protecting her final message. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Zoe. Found something in the bank's archived server logs. You need to see this. Mrs. Peterson, may I keep these? Sarah gestured to the album and letters. That's why Eleanor left them. But Sarah, be careful. The people who killed Thomas, who framed Michael, they're still out there, still powerful. But maybe not for long, Sarah said, watching Max through the window. His routine never faltered. 7 steps forward, 12 back. Phoenix rising again and again, spelling out the key to a mystery that had claimed 2 generations of Thompsons. The truth had waited 30 years to be told. Thomas had died protecting it. Michael had lost his freedom defending it. Eleanor had sacrificed everything to preserve it. And Max, faithful, patient Max, had guarded it for 5 long years, waiting for someone to understand the message encoded in his every move. Sarah gathered the materials carefully. Tonight, at 3 a.m., she and Zoe would be watching when the attic signal pulsed. Eleanor's digital vault was waiting to be opened, but only if they could decipher all the patterns, all the layers of security a grieving widow had spent decades perfecting. The game wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, for Thomas, for Michael, for Eleanor, and their most loyal ally was still there, tracing his coded message day after day, guarding the truth until the right moment finally arrived. The veterinary clinic on Pine Street hadn't changed much in 20 years. Dr. Maria Suarez still worked the same late hours, still kept the same meticulous records. She didn't seem surprised when Sarah and Zoe walked in just before closing. I wondered when someone would finally ask about Max's checkups, she said, pulling a thick file from her cabinet. Eleanor set up a trust fund for his care. Automatic payments, scheduled visits every 3 months. The neighbors bring him in, but the instructions, those came from Eleanor. Sarah opened the file. 5 years of documented visits, each with detailed notes, but it was the older records that caught her attention. Starting in 2018, Eleanor had brought Max in twice a week for what the charts listed as training evaluation. She was monitoring his physical condition very carefully, Dr. Suarez explained, and wanted to make sure he could maintain specific patterns of movement. Most people thought she was just being an overprotective owner, but she pulled out a series of motion tracking charts. This isn't normal behavior conditioning. It's precision, training. Zoe studied the charts. These movements, they match the patterns we've been seeing. The 7-12 sequence, the timing of his rotations. Eleanor was programming Max's behavior down to the minute. Not programming, Dr. Suarez corrected. Teaching. Max isn't a computer. He's a highly intelligent animal who chose to learn these patterns. Eleanor understood that. She wasn't just training him to move a certain way. She was teaching him to recognize signals, to understand timing, to make decisions. Sarah thought about Max's unwavering vigilance. She was preparing him for a long-term mission, 5 years and counting. Dr. Suarez's expression softened. I've been treating Max since he was a puppy. Watched Eleanor raise him, train him. After Thomas died, those two became inseparable. She used to say Max was the only one who could never be compromised, because his loyalty couldn't be bought, Sarah murmured, or threatened. Dr. Suarez hesitated, then reached into her desk. There's something else. The night before she disappeared, Eleanor brought this. She handed Sarah a sealed envelope, the paper yellowed with age. Said to give it to anyone who came asking the right questions about Max's training. Inside was a single page of handwritten notes dated April 14th, 2019. The house is ready. The evidence is secured. Max knows his role, not just to guard but to guide. Watch him carefully. Every movement has meaning. Every pause contains data. The sequence matters. Evening patrol, navigation protocol, midnight check, system verification. 3 a.m. signal, access window dawn reset, security refresh. The truth can't be stolen or destroyed if it's living, breathing, moving. They'll look for digital files, paper trails, hidden compartments. They'll never understand that the key isn't in the house, it's in the pattern itself. Max isn't just following a routine, he's maintaining a code. Living data, encoded in motion. And time, trust him. He knows when it's safe. He'll recognize the right moment, the right person. Everything depends on precise timing. One mistake, and 5 years of evidence disappears forever. P.S. Check his collar on the anniversary. Not the obvious one. Sarah looked up. The anniversary. I wondered about that too, Dr. Suarez said. Eleanor brought Max in for his first checkup on October 12, 1985, exactly 1 month after Thomas died. She always scheduled his annual boosters. For that date, Zoe was already checking her phone. October 12th, that's next week. 5 years and 1 month after Eleanor disappeared, Sarah realized. 1 month after the statute of limitations expires on financial fraud. She wasn't just waiting out the clock. She was waiting for an extra buffer, making absolutely sure they couldn't touch Michael again. Dr. Suarez gathered Max's records. Eleanor knew what she was up against. She built redundancies into everything. Max's care, his training, the evidence itself. Multiple fail-safes, multiple timers. The kind of security you design when you know your enemies are patient and powerful, and rich enough to make people disappear, Zoe added quietly. Which is why we need to move carefully, Sarah said. Max's collar, the house's security system, the timing of that signal, it's all connected. One piece out of place and we lose everything Eleanor built. Dr. Suarez nodded. I've kept Max healthy, kept his routine stable. Whatever Eleanor hid in that house, Max has guarded it faithfully. But he's getting older. We don't have unlimited time. Sarah studied the motion tracking charts again. The precision was incredible. Every movement choreographed, every pause measured. Eleanor had turned her dog's natural behaviors into a living key, a guardian who could adapt and respond in ways no computer system could match. We'll need help, she said finally. People we can trust, who understand different pieces of this puzzle. I've kept Max's real medical records separate from the clinic system, Dr. Suarez offered. Paper only, locked in my personal safe. If you need documentation of his training pattern, it's yours. And I've been mapping the house's power usage, Zoe added. There are spikes every night at 3 a.m., small ones like something's running a diagnostic. But next week, on the 12th, a bigger window, Sarah finished. Eleanor built in an anniversary protocol, one chance to access everything she hid. Time to gather your team, Dr. Suarez said, handing Sarah copies of the most crucial records. But remember, Max isn't just following training, he's making choices. Eleanor taught him to recognize friend from foe, to understand when the moment is right, trust his instincts. As they left the clinic, Sarah watched the sun setting over Maple Street. Max would be starting his evening patrol soon, tracing out his coded message, maintaining the pattern that kept Eleanor's final protocol alive. 5 years of waiting, of watching, of guarding secrets that could shake the financial world to its foundations. 1 week until the anniversary, one chance to get it right, and their most important ally was a dog who had never forgotten his training, never abandoned his post, never failed the trust Eleanor had placed in him. Ready? Zoe asked, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Sarah nodded, clutching the veterinary records. Time to decode the rest of Eleanor's message. Max has kept his vigil long enough. The black SUV had been parked across from the Thompson house for 2 hours. No markings, tinted windows, government plates. Sarah watched from Mrs. Peterson's living room as 2 men in suits photographed Max's movement patterns. They showed up. This morning, Mrs. Peterson said, hands trembling around her coffee cup. Claimed to be from animal control, but their shoes... She shook her head. Eleanor always said watch the shoes. Government agents wear expensive ones. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Detective Morrison. Get out now, they know. Too late. A sharp knock at the front door made them both jump. Through the peephole, Sarah saw the suits, badges already out. Ms. Martinez, FBI, we need to talk about your recent inquiries into the Thompson case. Sarah's heart raced. The photo, album, the veterinary records, everything was upstairs in her laptop bag. She glanced at Mrs. Peterson, who pointed to the back door with a slight nod. One moment, please, Sarah called out, already moving. She slipped out through the garden, a gate just as she heard the front door open. The sounds of protest from Mrs. Peterson covered her escape. But as Sarah rounded the corner, she froze. Max was breaking his pattern. For the first time in 5 years, the German shepherd had moved away from his post. He stood at the edge of his chain's reach, body tense, staring directly at Sarah. Then, his head turned, just slightly, toward the gap between houses that led to the back alley. Sarah understood. Eleanor hadn't just trained Max to guard the house. She'd trained him to recognize when the pattern needed to change. Taking a deep breath, Sarah walked calmly toward the indicated path. She could hear voices behind her, Mrs. Peterson still arguing with the agents. As she passed Max, he turned his head to watch the house, giving no sign she existed. A guardian providing cover. In the alley, Sarah found Zoe waiting in her battered Honda Civic. Morrison called me, the librarian explained as they pulled away. Said someone accessed the sealed records from Michael's trial yesterday. They know we're getting close. Sarah's phone buzzed again. An email from an anonymous account containing a scanned letter in Eleanor's handwriting. It had been found, the message said, by a janitor cleaning out Russell Bennett's office after his death. My old friend, the letter began. By now you've realized what Michael discovered, what Thomas died trying to expose. Did you think I spent 30 years at that bank just counting other people's money? I was counting something else. Every fraudulent transfer, every shell company, every bribe. The evidence is safe now, encrypted and cached where you'll never find it. Unless, here's my offer, let Michael go. Let the truth come out. In return, you get advance warning, time to move your money before the criminal investigations begin. If anything happens to me or my son, everything goes straight to the SEC, the FBI, and every major news outlet in the country. You have until April 15th to decide. You know where to find me. The letter was dated April 13th, 2019. 2 days later, Eleanor disappeared. She gave them a chance, Sarah realized, a way out. And they chose to make her disappear instead, Zoe said grimly. But they never found what she hid. Sarah's phone rang. Dr. Suarez. The agents just left the clinic, the vet said without preamble. They wanted Max's records. I gave them the official ones. Vaccinations, checkups. The training logs are safe. They're tying up loose ends, Sarah said. The statute of limitations is almost up and they're worried. They should be, Zoe replied, because Eleanor didn't just hide evidence of past crimes. According to those bank logs I found, Project Phoenix was still running in the background when Michael was arrested, still collecting data. Sarah stared at her. For 5 years? On an isolated server hidden in the bank's network like a digital ghost recording everything until 3 months ago, when Bennett died, when Bennett's death triggered something, a failsafe. Zoe pulled into the library's empty parking lot. The server wiped itself clean, but not before sending out a burst of encrypted data to an IP address matching the Thompson house, Sarah finished. Eleanor's final backup. 5 years of new evidence, on top of whatever she already had. Her phone buzzed one last time. Morrison again. Mrs. P is okay. Agents left, but they'll be back. Whatever Eleanor set up, it happens soon or it doesn't happen at all. Sarah looked at the date, October 5th, 1 week until the anniversary. 1 week until Max's collar needed to be checked. 1 week to decode 5 years of patterns before the FBI put all the pieces together. "We need to move faster," she said. "Tonight, during Max's evening patrol." Eleanor built in fail-safes, redundancies. There has to be a backup plan for exactly this situation. Zoe nodded grimly. "I'll bring the signal tracking equipment." "But Sarah, if they're watching the house, they're watching the wrong thing," Sarah said, remembering Max's subtle guidance in the alley. Eleanor didn't just train him to guard the house. She trained him to adapt, to guide, to protect. He's not just following a pattern, he's reading the situation. Through the library window, she could see the Thompson house in the distance. Max would be returning to his post now, resuming his patient vigil. But something had changed. The FBI's arrival had triggered a new protocol, a new pattern that only the most loyal guardian would recognize. The game was entering its final phase, and Max had just shown them the first move. The keys arrived at midnight, delivered by Katie Morrison, now 17, no longer drawing pictures of Max, but still watching. "Dad said to give you these." They were in evidence storage, logged under the wrong case number, accidentally on purpose. 3 keys on a tarnished ring, each marked with Eleanor's precise handwriting, F for front, B for back, and A, presumably for attic. But it was the ring itself that caught Sarah's attention. Its surface was scratched with the same deliberate pattern as Eleanor's phone. "We've got company," Zoe whispered from her position by the library window. 2 unmarked cars had parked at opposite ends of Maple Street. The FBI was settling in for the night. "Good," Sarah said, studying the keyring under her magnifying glass. "They'll be watching the house, not the pattern." Dr. Suarez's motion tracking charts were spread across the library's conference table. 5 years of Max's movements, overlaid with Eleanor's coded instructions. The evening patrol wasn't just a loop, it was a sequence of specific pauses, each one corresponding to a security checkpoint. "There," Zoe pointed. "Every night at 11:45, Max stops for exactly 30 seconds by the garden tap. The same spot where Thomas installed the house's original security panel. A reset point," Sarah realized. Eleanor built the new system around the old one, using Max's routine to maintain it. Katie, who had inherited her father's detective instincts, studied the charts. The FBI guys aren't watching Max anymore. They got bored when he started his usual patrol. Sarah checked her watch, 11:40 p.m. Because they don't understand what they're seeing. Eleanor designed it that way, hide the extraordinary in the ordinary. Through the window they could see Max beginning his evening circuit. To anyone else, it looked like the same routine he'd followed for 5 years. But Sarah now recognized the subtle signals, the angle of his ears, the precise timing of each pause, the way his body shifted to block specific sight lines. "He's creating blind spots," Zoe whispered, "moments when the house's entrance points are hidden from the street." Sarah laid out the plan. They'd enter through the back door during Max's 30-second reset pause, using the blind spot he created. The house's security system, if Eleanor's notes were correct, would recognize the original keys and grant them access to the first level of whatever she'd hidden. "The real challenge," Sarah explained, "will be the timing. We'll have exactly 7 minutes before Max's midnight check. If we're not in position by then, the system locks down," Zoe finished, "and Eleanor's fail-safe protocols kick in." Katie handed them each small earpieces. "Dad's surveillance gear. He said to tell you that Mom kept all of Eleanor's letters. That's how he knew to look for the keys." Sarah squeezed the teenager's hand. "Your drawings helped us understand Max's patterns. You saw what the adults missed." At 11:44, they moved. The FBI agents were focused on the front of the house, their cameras trained on Max's usual posts. They never noticed 2 shadows slipping through the gardens behind them. Max reached the garden tap right on schedule. As he settled into his reset, pause. Sarah saw what they'd all missed before. His body wasn't just blocking the back door from view, he was creating a specific shadow pattern, one that showed them exactly where to step to avoid the property's hidden sensors. The key turned, smoothly, silently. Inside, the house was a time capsule, dust-covered furniture, faded wallpaper, Eleanor's coffee cup still sitting on the kitchen counter. But beneath the abandoned surface, Sarah could hear it, the faint hum of machinery still running after. All these years. Over here, Zoe whispered, her equipment detecting signals behind the walls. Power readings are stronger than they should be for a supposedly empty house. They followed the hidden system's architecture, using Max's exterior. Patterns to guide them through the interior. Each pause in his routine corresponded to a specific room, a specific panel, a specific sequence. In the study, Sarah found what they'd been looking for, a single sheet of paper in Eleanor's handwriting, preserved between the pages of an old banking textbook. If you're reading this, you've understood the first layer. Max's evening patrol isn't just a guard routine. It's a physical manifestation of the encryption key. The house remembers the pattern, reads his movements through sensors in the foundation. 5 years of the same sequence, proving it's safe to unlock the next level. But tonight's different. You're here because they're getting close. Because Max broke pattern to guide you. Remember what Thomas taught me. The best security system isn't the one that keeps everyone out. It's the one that lets the right people in at the right time. The attic key won't work yet. The system needs to verify you through Max's midnight check. Stand in the second-floor study, lights off. Let him see you through the window. If he accepts, the final protocol will begin. Be careful, be patient. Trust Max. P.S. When the time comes, tell Michael I'm sorry I couldn't protect him from Bennett. But I could protect the truth. Sometimes that's the only justice we get. Sarah checked her watch. 11:57. 3 minutes until Max's midnight verification. Through the window, she could see the FBI agents changing shifts, still watching the wrong things, missing the real story unfolding right in front of them. Ready? She asked Zoe. Ready. But Sarah, if this works, if we get into Eleanor's vault, I know. We're not just exposing a banking scandal anymore. We're solving a murder. Maybe two. They climbed to the second floor, taking their positions. In the study, at exactly midnight, Max would look up at this window, would search for a sign that Eleanor's long wait was finally over. The house hummed around them, systems warming up, preparing for a verification sequence 5 years in the making. In the street below, Max finished his patrol and turned toward the house. It was time for the midnight check. Max's gaze met Sarah's through the darkened window. For 30 long seconds, he held perfectly still, his eyes reflecting the streetlight's glow. Then, deliberately, he sat, the same position shown in Katie's old drawings, the verification pose. Immediately, soft clicks echoed through the walls, the house's systems responding, accepting their presence. In Sarah's earpiece, Zoe's voice was tense, power signatures changing, something spinning up in the attic. They found the hidden staircase behind a false panel in the master bedroom closet. Eleanor's final note had been right. The attic key worked now, the lock yielding smoothly. Above them, machinery hummed with renewed purpose. The attic was Thomas Thompson's security room, transformed by Eleanor's vision. Old filing cabinets lined one wall, but their drawers were filled with servers, not papers. Cables snaked across. The floor, connecting to a central workstation, and there on the desk lay a leather-bound journal. "This is incredible," Zoe whispered, checking the equipment. She built a self-contained data center, solar-powered, with enough battery backup to run for decades. The cooling system pulls air through the old ventilation shaft, the one Max watches every night at 3 a.m. Sarah opened the journal with trembling hands. The first entry was dated September 15th, 1985, 1 week after Thomas's death. "My darling, they think they've won, think they've silenced you, but you taught me too well. A good security system keeps records of everything, every access, every change, every deletion. When you flagged those suspicious accounts, you didn't just make copies. You built a record of who tried to erase them. Bennett was sloppy back then, arrogant, didn't notice the backup logs, didn't understand that nothing in a bank system truly disappears. For 30 years, I've been the quiet widow, the harmless teller, all while building my own record. Every transaction they thought they'd hidden, every accidental death that protected their secrets. Project Phoenix was Michael's idea, but the framework, that came from you. Our boy has your instincts, your integrity. When he started finding the same patterns you did, I knew they'd come for him too. But this time, I was ready. The journal continued, detailing Eleanor's meticulous preparation. The house renovations hadn't just been about creating a secure server room. She'd turned the entire building into a monitoring station, collecting data from First Regional Bank's network through a backdoor she'd spent decades crafting. Found something, Zoe called from the workstation. The system's been receiving updates every night at 3 a.m. Small data packets routing through dozens of proxy servers, all originating from the bank's internal network, Sarah finished. Project Phoenix didn't just die when Michael was arrested. Eleanor kept it running. Not just running, learning. Zoe's fingers flew across the keyboard. The AI was designed to detect fraud patterns, but it evolved, started identifying relationships between accounts, between people, building a map of corruption that went way beyond First Regional. Sarah turned to the journal's final entry, dated April 14th, 2019. My darling, it's time. Bennett found Project Phoenix, but he doesn't understand what he's really discovered. Doesn't know that every attempt to shut it down has only made it stronger, sent its findings to secure drops across the country. Doesn't realize that his own actions, the planted evidence against Michael, the bribes, the shell companies, have all been logged and verified. Max knows his role. The house is ready. In a few hours, I'll give Bennett one last chance to make this right. When he refuses, when he threatens Michael's life like they threatened yours, I'll disappear. Let them think they've won again. But this time, the truth doesn't die with me. It lives in encrypted servers, in hidden databases, in a pattern of movements that no one will think to watch. A dog's daily routine, hiding a key that unlocks 30 years of evidence. 5 years. That's how long the statute of limitations runs. On most financial crimes, that's how long Max needs to maintain the pattern, to keep the system running, to wait for someone to understand what we built. My darling, I'll probably never see our boy free, never see justice done. But I've learned from your sacrifice. Sometimes victory isn't about living to see the truth exposed. It's about making sure the truth survives. Through the attic vent, they could see Max below, maintaining his position. The FBI agents had changed shifts again, their cameras still recording the same routine they'd dismissed as meaningless. Sarah? Zoe's voice was urgent. The system's updating itself, preparing for something. Look at this timestamp. October 12th, 3 a.m., 5 years and 1 month after Eleanor disappeared. The final protocol, Sarah realized. When the statute of limitations expires, when they think they're finally safe, everything gets released. Every record, every transaction, every connection. Enough evidence to expose dozens of people who thought they'd buried their crimes forever. Sarah checked her watch, 1:15 a.m., less than 2 hours until the next signal check. Below, Max continued his vigil, guarding the system that had turned his loyalty into an unbreakable encryption key. Eleanor didn't just hide the evidence, she said softly. She built a time bomb, waited until they couldn't touch Michael, couldn't force him to testify against anyone. And then the truth comes out, Zoe finished. All of it, at once. Unless, Sarah thought, someone stopped it first. The FBI wasn't just watching the house by accident. Somewhere in Bennett's files, they'd found a warning, a hint of what Eleanor Thompson had built in her quiet grief, her patient rage. They had until 3 a.m. to prepare, to make sure Eleanor's final protocol activated exactly as she'd planned, to protect the truth that had cost the Thompson family so much to preserve. At 2:15 a.m., Project Phoenix began its final data compilation. Screens lit up across the attic workstation, displaying 30 years of financial crimes in stark digital clarity. Zoe worked frantically to catalog it all, while Sarah pieced together the story hidden in the numbers. "Look at this," Zoe said, pulling up a series of transaction records. The day before Thomas died, he flagged a massive transfer from First Regional to a Cayman Islands account. The bank claimed it was a computer error, said the records were corrupted. But Eleanor's system kept a shadow copy. The transfer had been the first of many. Shell companies, numbered accounts, billions, moved through an intricate web of fraud. But it wasn't just money laundering. Sarah found records of other deaths labeled as accidents or natural causes. Whistleblowers, investigators, anyone who'd gotten too close. Bennett was just the public face, Sarah realized, scanning Eleanor's meticulously organized files. The bank was a front for something bigger: political bribes, corporate espionage, market manipulation. And Thomas found it by accident, Zoe added, just doing his job as head of security. A new file appeared on the screen: medical records. From the day Thomas died. Eleanor had spent years collecting them, building a case. The heart attack had left traces of a rare toxin in his blood, one that degraded quickly and mimicked natural causes. The same toxin had shown up in 3 other deaths connected to First Regional Bank. That's why Eleanor waited so long to act, Sarah said. She wasn't just gathering evidence of financial crimes. She was building a murder case. Zoe's equipment picked up increased activity from the FBI vehicles outside. "They're moving." Something spooked them. Through the vent, they watched Max adjust his position slightly, blocking the agent's view of the house's east side. Still guarding, still protecting, even as the net tightened around them. "Eleanor knew they'd come," Sarah said, reading through the final data sets. "Look, she built in a last-minute protocol. If the system detects active interference before October 12th, it releases everything early," Zoe finished, eyes widening. "The moment they try to shut it down, every piece of evidence gets sent to newsrooms, law enforcement agencies, and regulatory bodies worldwide." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Detective Morrison. "FBI requesting breach team. 15 minutes out. Whatever you found, secure it now." The pieces clicked together. Eleanor hadn't just been protecting Michael. She'd used his arrest, his silence, as cover for a much larger investigation. Project Phoenix had evolved beyond its original purpose, becoming a tool to map decades of corruption. Every death, every cover-up, every stolen dollar, all connected, all documented. And Max wasn't just guarding a house or a server. He was maintaining the encryption key that kept it all secure. His movements, his timing, his unwavering routine, a living cipher that no one could crack or corrupt. "Sarah?" Zoe's voice was urgent. "The system's detecting multiple intrusion attempts. Someone's trying to hack in remotely." Outside, car doors slammed. The FBI agents were done watching and waiting, but in the street below, Max stood calmly at his post. 5 years of training had prepared him for exactly this moment. His eyes fixed on the attic vent, waiting for the 3 a.m. signal check that would trigger Eleanor's final protocol. Sarah looked at her watch. 2:45 a.m., 15 minutes until the truth emerged. 15 minutes to ensure that Eleanor Thompson's patient revenge would not be stopped. The breach team was coming, but they didn't understand what they were really up against. Eleanor hadn't just built a secure server or a clever hiding place. She'd created something far more powerful, a dead woman's switch, powered by a dog's unshakable loyalty and a mother's determination to see justice done. Max's midnight verification hadn't just given them access. It had armed the final sequence. All they had to do now was protect the system for 15 more minutes. Let Eleanor's last gift to her son, to Thomas, to justice itself, complete its long-planned mission. Sarah turned to Zoe, determination hardening her voice. Time to show them why Eleanor Thompson trusted her evidence to a dog instead of a safe. The first crash came from below, the FBI breach team hitting the front door. But Eleanor had planned for this too. Heavy steel reinforcements hidden behind the old wood bought them precious minutes. 7 minutes until the 3 a.m. protocol, Zoe announced, her fingers flying across the keyboard. They're trying to breach the system's firewalls. Sarah found what she was looking for in Eleanor's final failsafe folder, an audio file dated April 15, 2019, the last recording of Eleanor Thompson, captured by the house's security system hours before she disappeared. The playback filled the attic with echoing voices. "You really think you can blackmail me, Eleanor?" Russell Bennett's voice, arrogant, amused. "Blackmail? No, Russell. This is justice, for Thomas, for Michael, for everyone you've killed to protect your secrets." Such dramatic accusations. Thomas had a heart attack. Your son committed fraud. Simple, clean explanations that everyone believes, except I have proof. Of everything. The murders, the money laundering, the political bribes. 30 years of evidence, Russell. All safely encrypted and ready to release unless Michael is freed. A sharp laugh. You think I can't find whatever hole you've hidden it in? I own this town, Eleanor. Own the police, the judges, the bank examiners. That's why I didn't hide it in a hole. I hid it somewhere you'll never think to look, protected by something you can't bribe or threaten or kill. Footsteps below, the breach team reaching the second floor. Through the vent, Sarah saw Max calmly adjust his position, maintaining his guard stance even as chaos erupted around him. The recording continued. "You have until midnight to decide, Russell. Free Michael. Let the truth come out slowly. Give people time to move their money. Or I release everything at once. Your choice. You're bluffing. You don't have... Project Phoenix didn't die when you arrested Michael. It evolved. Every transaction, every shell company, every death... The AI mapped it all, built connections you didn't even know existed, dead men's switches that activate the moment I disappear." A long pause. Then, "You've gotten old, Eleanor. Sentimental. Thomas would be. Disappointed to see you throwing your life away like this. No, Russell, Thomas would be proud, because I learned from his mistake. He confronted you directly, trusted the system to work. I've spent 30 years becoming the system, and now you'll disappear. Like Thomas, like all the others, who thought they could expose us." Eleanor's laugh was soft, confident. "Check your phone, Russell. While we've been talking, Project Phoenix has been downloading its core findings to secure servers across the country. Kill me, kill Michael, destroy this house, it doesn't matter. The truth survives." The recording ended. 3 minutes until 3 a.m. The breach team hit the attic door, but Eleanor's reinforcements held. Outside, Sarah saw FBI agents approaching, Max with catch poles. But the old dog didn't move, didn't flinch. His eyes remained fixed on the vent, waiting for the signal that would complete his mission. 2 minutes, Zoe called out. Primary servers uploading final data packets. Secondary. Systems engaging. Sarah understood now why Eleanor had chosen this method, this timing. The statute of limitations protected Michael from retrial, while 5 years of additional evidence gathered by Project Phoenix implicated dozens of new conspirators. The perfect legal trap, sprung by a mother's patience and a dog's unwavering loyalty. The attic door groaned. One hinge gave way. 1 minute, Zoe whispered. External feeds ready, distribution network standing by. Through the vent, Sarah watched an FBI agent reach for Max's chain. The old dog finally moved, not to attack, but to sit in his verification pose one last time. Above him, the attic vent's cooling fans spun up, right on schedule. 30 seconds, Zoe said. Primary release beginning. The attic door crashed. Open, agents poured in, weapons raised. FBI, hands where we can see them. But Sarah was watching Max through the vent, watching as the old dog lifted his head to the night sky. 3 a.m., Zoe said quietly. Eleanor's final protocol activating. Now, the world exploded in headlines. By dawn, every major news organization had received Project Phoenix's data dump. The FBI agents who had stormed the Thompson house found themselves part of a story much bigger than a simple break-in. Sarah watched from Mrs. Peterson's living room as federal vehicles swarmed Maple Street. Not just FBI now, SEC, Treasury Department, U.S. Marshals. The investigating had become the investigated. "Look at this," Zoe said, spreading court documents across the coffee table. Emergency warrants, issued within hours of the data release. Dozens of names, including half the FBI field office. Eleanor's evidence had mapped corruption far beyond First Regional Bank. The preliminary findings read like a thriller. In the matter of First Regional Bank et al., systematic fraud spanning 3 decades, coordinated manipulation of financial markets, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit murder. Max sat calmly in his usual spot, watching the chaos unfold. The agents who had tried to remove him hours earlier now kept their distance, their own names probably buried somewhere in Eleanor's files. Sarah's phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke, but the call she'd been waiting for finally came at noon. "Ms. Martinez," a tired voice. "This is Judge Caroline Weber. I've just signed an emergency order for Michael Thompson's immediate release." The evidence that came to light, it's unprecedented. His conviction was based on entirely fabricated evidence. Through her tears, Sarah watched more federal agents entering the bank's headquarters downtown. "What happens now?" "Now?" the judge sighed. "Now we begin the largest financial crimes investigation in history." Eleanor Thompson didn't just document the crimes. She mapped the relationships, the power structures, the whole network of corruption. It's magnificent, actually. 5 years of automated data collection, building on 30 years of human intelligence work, and the statute of limitations. Expired on the original charges, yes, but the evidence shows ongoing criminal enterprise, new charges, new crimes, new defendants. Eleanor Thompson didn't just prove her son's innocence. She built a case that will take years to fully prosecute. Sarah thanked the judge and turned to Mrs. Peterson, who had been quietly weeping. "Michael's coming home," the old woman nodded, watching Max through the window. Eleanor would be proud. All those years, people thought he was just a dog. They never understood what faithfulness really meant. By evening, the story had gone global. Financial markets reeled as Project Phoenix's evidence revealed corruption at the highest levels. Sarah's article, released that afternoon, told the human story behind the numbers. A mother's justice, the true story of Eleanor Thompson's 5-year gambit. The piece was already breaking online reading records, but Sarah wasn't done. There were still questions to answer. Where was Eleanor? What had happened that final night? The evidence she'd gathered hinted at deeper mysteries, at connections not yet fully understood. A small commotion drew their attention outside. A prison transport van had arrived. Michael Thompson, thinner and grayer but unbowed, stepped into the sunlight. For a moment he just stood there, blinking at the crowd of reporters and federal agents. Then Max broke his pattern for only the second time in 5 years. The old dog rose smoothly and walked to the end of his chain, tail wagging. Slowly, Michael approached, tears streaming down his face. "Hey, boy," he whispered. "Mom said you'd keep the watch, said you'd guard the truth until it was time." Max pressed his head into Michael's hand. 5 years of separation vanished in an instant, of recognition, of loyalty rewarded. Sarah watched through her own tears as Michael unlocked the chain with hands that shook. "Let's go home, boy, for real this time." But Max didn't move. Instead, he turned his head toward the house, then back to Michael. "One more signal." "There's more, isn't there?" Michael said softly. "Mom left something else. Something just for family." Max's tail wagged once. The final protocol wasn't quite complete. Sarah understood. Eleanor Thompson had released the evidence that would save her son and expose the guilty. But somewhere in that house, protected by 5 years of patience and a dog's unwavering loyalty, waited one last message. A mother's final words to her son. The truth about April 15th, 2019 was still waiting to be found. The release papers lay on the Thompson house's kitchen table, their official seals stark against the dust. Michael traced his fingers over the words: full exoneration, wrongful conviction, immediate release with restoration of all rights and privileges. Max sat beside him, no longer bound by chain or routine, but still watching, still waiting. The house hummed around them, Eleanor's systems completing their final protocols. "She's here somewhere," Michael said softly, holding a flashlight beam steady on the wall. "Not physically, but Mom always left messages for me, ever since Dad died. Little notes, clues, her way of teaching me to think like a security expert." Sarah and Zoe exchanged glances. They hadn't told Michael about the attic yet, letting him process his freedom first, but Max's eyes kept moving to the ceiling, then back to Michael, still guiding, still protecting. "The papers say I was released at 3:47 p.m., Michael continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom would have loved that. She always said time was the best encryption key. Patient enough, precise enough, and you could hide anything." He stopped at a familiar photo, Eleanor, Thomas, and a young Michael at the bank's Christmas party. Dad found the first signs of corruption in '85, told Mom he was going to report it through proper channels. The next day, he swallowed hard. Mom spent 30 years preparing her response, and all that time they thought she was just a harmless widow. Max stood suddenly, padding to the study door. Michael followed, understanding dawning in his eyes. "She used Dad's old security protocols. Didn't she? The ones he designed for the bank, but she modified them, improved them. Added artificial intelligence," Zoe confirmed. "Project Phoenix wasn't just your idea, Michael. It was your mother's way of finishing what your father started." In the study, Max pressed his nose against a specific book on the shelf. Michael smiled through tears. Mom's favorite, Patient Trust by Teilhard de Chardin. She used to read it to me after Dad died. The book triggered a hidden mechanism. A panel slid open, revealing the attic stairs. Max led the way up, his purpose unwavering. The attic workstation had one final message waiting. As Michael sat down, Max placed his paw on a sensor pad beneath the desk. The screen lit up with Eleanor's face. "My dearest Michael, if you're watching." This then, everything worked. The evidence is released, your name is cleared, and Max has completed his mission. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the plan. Sorry I had to disappear, but they were watching you too closely. Your safety, your freedom, that was worth any sacrifice." Tears fell freely down Michael's face as his mother continued. "I don't know if we'll meet again. I've arranged things carefully, but know that every day of these 5 years, every piece of evidence gathered, every corrupted official exposed, it was all for you, for the integrity you showed, just like your father." The screen flickered. Max knows where to find the last key, a safe deposit box, waiting for the right moment. But that's for later. Right now, take him home, let him rest. His watch is finally over. The message ended. Michael buried his face in Max's fur, shoulders shaking. The old dog pressed close, offering the same steady comfort he'd provided Eleanor. During her years of patient planning, Sarah and Zoe slipped quietly downstairs, leaving father's son and mother's sentinel to their reunion. Outside, federal agents continued gathering evidence, uncovering the full scope of Eleanor Thompson's justice. But up in Thomas's converted attic, in the heart of Eleanor's digital fortress, a family's legacy of integrity had finally come full circle. Max had guarded more than evidence or encrypted files. He'd protected the truth of who the Thompsons really were, and always had been. The new deed to 1247 Maple Street gleamed with fresh ink. Michael's name replaced Eleanor's, the transfer backdated to April 15th, 2019, his mother's final gift, held in trust until his exoneration. But it wasn't the legal document that held his attention. Inside the safe deposit box Max had led them to, they found another of Eleanor's precisely timed messages. A letter, coordinates, and a key to a small cottage in northern Maine. The postmark was recent. "I'm safe," Eleanor's familiar handwriting assured. "The evidence is released, the truth is known, and now it's time for our family to heal. The cottage is waiting, as am I. Max knows the way. He always has." Sarah watched from Mrs. Peterson's porch as Michael loaded the last of Eleanor's servers into an evidence van. The FBI's forensic team had documented everything, but the heart of Project Phoenix, the AI that had mapped 5 years of ongoing corruption, had already done its work. The indictments were flowing like a digital tsunami. "Will you write the whole story?" Michael asked, joining her with Max at his side. "Only what's safe to tell," Sarah promised. "Some secrets deserve to stay secret, like the fact that Eleanor Thompson wasn't hiding at all." The cottage coordinates matched a property purchased by Angela Morrison's sister 5 years ago. Detective Morrison had known all along, helping Eleanor disappear while keeping her close enough to monitor her plan's progress. Max's veterinary records showed regular checkups, not just in the city, but at a small clinic near the Maine border. Eleanor had been able to see him, to know her faithful guardian was maintaining his vital routine. The ultimate security system, built on love and trust rather than electronics and encryption. "The house feels different now," Michael said, watching the federal agents pack up their equipment. "Lighter somehow." "Because its job is done," Sarah replied. "Like Max's." The old dog sat contentedly between them, no longer bound by patterns and protocols. His mission had evolved from guarding evidence to guarding family, a role he'd been preparing for all along. Mrs. Peterson emerged with lemonade and her famous cookies. "The neighborhood won't be the same without Max's patrols," she said, scratching. "Behind his ears. 5 years of watching, waiting, making sure we all remembered. Mom knew people would gossip about the dog who wouldn't leave." Michael smiled. Knew the story would stay alive, keep people curious. Everything she did had multiple purposes. The evidence van pulled away. Inside the Thompson house, Eleanor's systems had gone dormant, their data secured in federal servers. But they'd served their greatest purpose, exposing corruption, clearing Michael's name, and protecting Eleanor until justice could be served. "When do you leave for Maine?" Sarah asked softly. "Tomorrow." Max seems eager to lead the way. Michael's eyes were bright with tears and hope. 5 years is a long time to wait for a hug from your mom. Sarah thought about her article already drafted on her laptop. She'd tell the story of Project Phoenix, of Eleanor's brilliant plan, of Max's unwavering loyalty. But the final reunion that belonged to the Thompsons alone. "The deed has one unusual clause," Michael mentioned. "The house can never be sold out of the family. Mom wants it kept ready, just in case. In case someone else needs a fortress of truth," Sarah finished. "A place where patience and loyalty can defeat corruption and greed." Max's tail wagged gently. His watch might be over, but the Thompson legacy would continue. In the end, Eleanor had protected more than evidence. She'd proven that justice, like love, only needed time and trust to prevail. The Maine cottage waited, and somewhere Eleanor Thompson was about to hold her son again, with their faithful sentinel by their side. 1 year later, the residents of Maple Street gathered for a small ceremony. The bronze plaque caught the morning sun as Michael unveiled it. "In honor of Max, 2014 to 2025, faithful guardian of truth and justice, sometimes the greatest acts of courage are measured in patience rather than daring." Eleanor Thompson, the old German Shepherd, had lived just long enough to see the family reunited, to spend 6 precious months with Eleanor and Michael in the Maine cottage. His final days were filled with love, free from patterns and protocols, though he'd still check the cottage windows at 3 a.m., ever vigilant. Sarah stood with Mrs. Peterson, watching Michael and Eleanor, now back home after the last corruption case had been settled, place flowers beneath the plaque. The Thompson house had become a landmark of sorts. Law students studied Project Phoenix's methodology. Ethics classes debated Eleanor's choices. Tech companies analyzed her brilliant use of AI and human behavior patterns. But the neighbors remembered simpler things: the dog who never left his post, the widow who outsmarted the powerful, the son who kept his integrity at devastating cost. Max's worn path remained visible in the grass, a testament to unwavering faith. "The house feels peaceful now," Mrs. Peterson said softly, "like it's watching, waiting for the next time it's needed." Eleanor squeezed her old friend's hand. "There will always be corrupt men who think their power makes them untouchable, always be people who need a fortress of truth." The plaque marked more than Max's dedication. It honored a family's 3 generation stand against corruption, a mother's brilliant revenge, and the simple, profound power of a dog's loyalty. As the autumn sun warmed the gathering, Sarah thought she saw Max's spirit in every corner of the property, guarding, guiding, protecting. Some sentinels never truly leave their post. They just find new ways to keep watch. Sarah's book sat on the Thompson house mantel, its cover showing Max in his guardian pose, silhouetted against the rising sun. The Faithful Sentinel, a story of justice, love, and unshakable loyalty, had spent 52 weeks on the bestseller list, but its most important readers were right here on Maple Street. In her office at the city newspaper, Sarah kept a framed photo from the Maine reunion. Eleanor holding Michael, Max pressed against their legs, his mission finally complete. The image reminded her of what Eleanor had proven, that justice doesn't always wear a badge or carry a gavel. Sometimes it walks on 4 legs, counts its steps, encoded patterns, and waits 5 patient years for truth to emerge. Project Phoenix's revelations had transformed the financial industry. New oversight systems, inspired by Eleanor's work, now protected whistleblowers and tracked corruption. The Thompson house remained a symbol, not just of one family's stand against power, but of the quiet ways good people resist evil. Max's grave beneath the memorial plaque had become a place of pilgrimage. People left dog treats, flowers, notes of gratitude. Children asked to hear the story of the dog who guarded secrets. Students studied Eleanor's brilliant combination of technology and trust. But Sarah's favorite detail lived in the closing lines of her book. "In the end, the greatest security system ever devised wasn't built from servers and software. It was built from a mother's love, a son's integrity, and a dog's unwavering faith. Some call it the Thompson algorithm, the perfect fusion of human intelligence and canine loyalty. But for those who witnessed it, it has a simpler name: Love's Long." Watch.